Students, we are going to study a very interesting topic today of English literature, which is very common to all the syllabi in the state and also in the country. So, all the students of literature are going to study this topic, definitely going to study, whether in the undergraduate classes or in the postgraduate level. So, it's going to be very relevant. So, we are going to study this important period of English literature, which is called the Romantic era, or it is called the Romantic period, or the Romantic revival, Age of Romance. So, we have a lot of names for it, but we must understand that why it is so significant to us as students of literature to know exactly the background of the Romantic movement, which is one of the major movements in English literature. And it was not confined only to England, but across Europe it took place. And the change of sensibility could be seen not just in literature but in the other arts and crafts and architecture. It just spanned all the arts, not only literature. So, how did it begin? And what are the important features of the Romantic movement or the Romantic age? Actually, the late 18th century and the early 19th century, these are the periods where we see the peak of the Romantic movement. It started in the last part of the 18th century, and the official date is 1798 with the publication of the Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge, and that marks the official beginning of the Romantic era. The word romance always evokes amongst everybody the thoughts of, some kind of a love relationship between a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman. But here in literature, when we use the word romance, it is not that at all. It is something else. And the Romantic revival had many features, many important features, which we will look at now so that you understand why such poetry and prose came into being after the neoclassical age, which we saw before the Romantic revival. The neoclassical age, or the Augustan period as it is called, had literature which was very urban, town based. It was rather superficial and followed a lot of rules and regulations, and there were many prescribed rules for writing, even writing poetry. And we see that in Dryden and Pope's poetry, in Dryden's poetry also, and in Pope's poetry. But the Romantic era began as a kind of a revolt against the rules of the Augustan age. And the poets and the writers felt that literature should not be bound by such rules and laws, and they just wanted freedom from all the rules. And that is how, the importance of imagination, the importance of intuition, instinct, impulse, fancy, all these things came in with the Romantics. And they said that reason is not the only way that you should look at the world. You have many other ways of looking at the world and at nature and at the universe, not just through rules and not just through scientific norms. So they felt that imagination is the supreme power which helps us look at the world in a very different manner. And this superiority of the imagination over the intellect really marks the Romantic movement in a very important manner. So we should think that William Blake, who wrote so many poems which were very close to nature, which talked about childhood and innocence and the beauty of nature, So he is actually known as the precursor of the Romantics, or a pre-romantic poet. But actually, if we really look at it, and the number of poems that he has written, and he was a visionary, not just a poet, and his poetry transcended the surroundings and it went into another realm altogether. So Blake should be, in fact, known as the first of the Romantic poets. And his contribution has been immense, although it was not in his lifetime that he got so much of recognition. It came later. So we look upon his songs of innocence as a very important part of Romantic poetry. And there is a lot of similarity in the way he looks at nature and he looks at childhood, and how William Wordsworth later looks at nature and at childhood. So, the important features of the Romantic movement would also include a love for the past, a love for childhood, a love for lost innocence, and especially the innocence of childhood, which is recalled repeatedly by William Wordsworth, and the beauty of childhood. So the role of memory comes in automatically, and how you look back at the past and you long for the past. So that marks the Romantic poetry also, including other features like the sense of wonder, the sense of curiosity, how a child is so curious in this universe when the child looks at things first, for the first time, and how he perceives them. That sense of wonder, if we retain later on in life, and then we are able to express that sense of mystery and wonder at the universe and its beauty and at its vastness, that is actually a very important element also of the Romantic movement. So the love for the past and the sense of wonder, and of course then we have this revival of the medieval legends of Greek mythology, especially in John Keats, who was one of the younger romantics, because the older romantic poets were William Wordsworth and Coleridge, and later on the younger romantics were Shelley and Keats and Byron, who came later. So all of them, somehow, somewhere, they revive the past, the medieval ages, the Greek mythology, and lot of references to the Greek gods and stories we find in the poetry of John Keats, especially. So that is also that's why we call it a revival, because it revived these things in poetry, and it also revived certain stanza forms which had been earlier lost during the Augustan period, which was so fascinated by the heroic couplet, which was used by most of the poets during the Augustan age, against which the Romantic poets rebelled. And this is known as a kind of a revolt in that sense. So, all that takes on a different aspect completely in the poetry of the Romantics. The love for nature, the return to nature, as we call it, because in the Augustan age, the poets had lost touch with nature, and they would only write about the cities and the towns, and the poetry that we see in that age has completely lost touch with the emotions of human beings and closeness to nature, which is brought back by the Romantic poets in a very big way. And while Wordsworth's poetry reflects nature in an almost spiritual way, and there is a communion between the human soul and the soul of nature, and it seems that the two souls flow into each other, and the poetry kind of transcends the surroundings and reaches a spiritual level. So Wordsworth was a very, very important poet of nature, and for him nature worship was, it amounted to a religion. And later on we find uh, a very sensuous approach to nature in John Keats, where he describes the sounds and colors of flowers and the bird song and the clouds, and his fascination, especially for colors and sounds, comes out very well in his famous odes, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to a Grecian Urn, and of course his love for Greek mythology also emerges in his odes very beautifully, and also in his other poems. So all of them were really taken up with nature. Although when we look at Coleridge, Coleridge has brought forward another very important aspect of romantic poetry on the romantic movement, which was the love for the supernatural, love for the exotic. Because in his poetry, we do find very important supernatural elements, like in Kubla Khan, in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in Christabel. So he was very, very obsessed by, presenting things which are not, which transcend reality and go into another field altogether. And that beauty of his poetry has come out so well, especially in Kubla Khan, his poem, which is actually a reverie. It was written during a reverie which he had, a kind of a daydream, and it's although he calls it a fragment, but it's not a fragment, it's a complete poem in itself, and it evokes very strange feelings in us. And that's why we come to this word strangeness, because strangeness added to beauty is another part of romantic poetry. And we do have romantic prose also, romantic writers who wrote prose, Walter Scott, Jane Austen, but the poetry is what marks the very uh, kind of, the it reflects romanticism at its best. So, poetry is the main genre which we see in this period, and his this Shelley's ode to the West Wind, and Blake's Songs of Innocence. I would like to kind of start the element of romance right from William Blake, because his very special description of how innocence is lost later by people when they experience this world. And that's why we have two segments: one is Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. So, in the Songs of Innocence, we find such important elements of the romantic poetry. So, Blake should be seen as the first of the romantics, definitely. And Wordsworth tried to make the ordinary events and the ordinary people, he tried to describe them in a way, in which he gave them the color of his imagination. Whereas Coleridge was trying to make the supernatural happenings and the supernatural beings look very convincing to us. So, this is what those two poets were trying to do in their poetry. And definitely, Coleridge has a very different kind of sensibility from Wordsworth, although they were very close to each other and together they wrote this lyrical ballads, a collection of some of Wordsworth's poems and some of Coleridge's poems in this lyrical ballads. And lyrical ballads marks the official start of the Romantic era, which revolted against the Augustans. It revived the Hellenic elements, it revived medieval elements, it revived closeness to nature, and the importance of imagination, which we could see also in the Elizabethan age earlier, but which had been lost over the decades and lost completely by the time the Augustans came in. So, this revival was very important for literature because this sense of beauty and this love for beauty and a very deepened appreciation of beauty and a very enhanced relationship with nature. These two are very important aspects of this movement of literature, and that is why Wordsworth is seen as the most important poet, because he is all the time bringing us close to the beauty of nature and every aspect of nature, and of course the role of memory in his poetry makes it very special for us, because all the time he remembers in various poems, in Tintern Abbey, in Ode to Intimations of Immortality, he is recalling, how a child is so close to nature, too close to spirituality when he comes into this world, and he can feel the divine, and he can experience things which later on, when he grows up, he cannot experience that closeness to the divine, because he comes from heaven and he is very close to the god. So the child is a kind of a god in himself, and he has that divinity which Wordsworth has brought out very beautifully in his poetry. And that's why he says that the child is actually superior to the man, because he can feel the closeness to God within his soul, which later the which later the experiences of life and the world take away that divinity from us. So that sublime element, also the element of sublimity in the romantic poetry, is also very, very crucial. And of course, the uh, lyricism of Shelley's poetry, because Shelley was the one whose poetry was the most musical of all, and it has such a fascinating rhythm about it that it lends itself very easily to music, and he feels the music of nature, and he has expressed his inner, he is another one who has worshipped beauty completely. And it is really unfortunate that both Keats and Shelley, they died so young. Actually, they were born sometime around when the lyrical ballads were published by Coleridge and Wordsworth, who were the senior romantics, and Keats and Shelley came later. They were the second generation romantic poets, but they were unfortunately they died young, and whatever poetry they have left behind is uh, absolutely eternal and universal and timeless. Romantic poetry is very spontaneous. It is not crafted, not a single word appears to be crafted. It comes out right from the soul of the poet, and it is absolutely instinctive and impulsive, and it is a gift of the gods. Actually, spontaneity is one of the very important features also again of romanticism, because nothing is studied or pre it is not that it is thought about too much. Like Wordsworth says that poetry is the uh, recollection of recollection and tranquility of spontaneous overflow of emotion. So, at the moment, at any given moment, the poet experiences this spontaneous overflow of emotions, and later on in tranquility, he recollects that experience of emotional feelings. I mean, he recollects those emotions when he is at peace, because at that time he is too emotional, so he cannot express himself right then. But when he finds tranquility, he can recall those emotions, and then he can record them in his poetry. And that's another way that memory plays an important role, and in Wordsworth's poetry and also in the other romantic poets to some extent, memory is an important aspect also. And then you have the Hellenic elements, which are quite fascinating for us because Greek mythology revived in a very different manner in this poetry, in romantic poetry, and we find sometimes some of the stanza forms which had been long forgotten by readers, and they have been brought back by all these romantic poets. And Sir Walter Scott was another very important writer of the Romantic movement, wrote poetry and prose both. And this romantic poetry talks about, people, the warriors going to battles and the thrill of the battles, and how how the long forgotten tales they emerge, medieval tales, long forgotten medieval tales also re-emerge in in the romantic poetry. So this idea of romance, which we generally mistake for something else, but here the entire concept of romance, it covers so many different aspects which together made this literary movement so important for us that even today the romantic poets are studied extensively at both the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. In fact, some of their poems are prescribed in schools also, in the school textbooks, which we have always seen that Ode to a Nightingale is usually prescribed for school students also. So the entire concept of beauty, like Keats said, beauty is truth and truth beauty. So that is in a way a great principle of the romantic movement, that beauty itself is considered to be the ultimate truth. So this love for beauty is seen in all the romantic poets in different ways. And in Wordsworth, it emerges as love for the beauty of nature, and nature for him is like a supreme power which rules his entire life, and his soul, and uh, his autobiographical long poem, The Prelude. It gives us many insights into his relationship with nature since the time he was a child, because he's, from the Lake District, and how his entire childhood is spent among the all the natural surroundings which are just part of him, and he's a part of them. So his closeness to nature is definitely a very pure form of closeness. I think the purest among all the romantics. So Blake extends into Wordsworth, and from Blake we start seeing all these elements of romanticism in literature coming in and taking over from the rules and prescriptions of the Augustan age, which we also call the neoclassical age of Pope and Dryden. So that has totally been overturned by the imagination, fantasy, and intuition and instinct of the romantics. And they have created a space for themselves in the history of English literature in such a way that without them, it is just not possible to imagine any kind of uh, beauty and their soulfulness in literature. It's such a strong movement and such a strong feeling that they have evoked and created such a canvas of wonderful elements that no student can afford to overlook this period at all, because it forms it's a great pillar of, and we have seen that romanticism has emerged not just in English literature but in French, in German, even in our Hindi literature. We have this Chayavad, the era of Chayavad, in which we have poets like Sumitra Nandan Pant, like Harivansh Rai Bachchan ji, Mahadevi Verma. So that is the Indian Romantic era, and Romanticism always comes in various uh, ages, in various countries, as a kind of a reaction to too much of technical thinking, too much of scientific rules, and suddenly, there is this complete renaissance that comes in, and that renaissance is what the romantic revival was. It is a kind of a renaissance of wonder, as we call it. Wonder, the element of wonder was missing completely from the Augustan age, and there was no curiosity, there was no mystery in life. So the mystery and wonder was created by the Romantic movement in different ways by the different poets, and together they created an aura of wonder and beauty, and of course depth. The depth of emotions is very important also for them, because superficial feelings were never part of romantic poetry, like they were part of the age of Dryden and Pope, because everything was on the surface, and deep human emotions were not touched by the poets of the Augustan era at all. So the depth of human emotions is something which marks the romantic poetry in a great way, and emotions and imagination and the stress on the individual, because in the Augustan age we see that the individual is not very important. They write about social trends, they write about what is happening in society at large in a general manner, but they don't talk about the beauty of the individual, how every individual is so different from each other. And that's why we see that each romantic poet is so different from each other, their poetry is so different from each other. You can just read a few lines and you can identify that this is by Keats, this is by Shelley, and this is by Wordsworth. So it's just not possible to be confusing their thoughts and how they look upon the world. But yet, all these features can be found in the poetry of all the romantic poets. All the features that we have talked about, which are part of the romantic movement. But in the earlier century, in the earlier era, the poetry was not at all individualized. The subjects were not the same as the romantic poetry, because romantic poetry is very personal and it is very subjective. So, subjectivity and the personal element in romantic poetry is very important. That's what distinguishes it so much from all the other kind of poetry. So it is very personal and very emotional, and it is very subjective. It's about the poet's own experience, his own life, what is happening to him, what are the experiences he's undergoing. So it's not that they are writing just some kind of commentary on society or on some social happening. So it is something which is within them, and that is why sometimes, most of the times actually, it reaches the spiritual levels and it touches our hearts even today, because these emotions are timeless and universal, and they work across ages, they work across countries, and all human beings can identify themselves with these spontaneous emotions which we find in romantic poetry, because it is not bound by any kind of contemporary uh, context. So it goes over the ages, it continues to be eternal. So all wonderful, great literature, always it applies to all coming ages, and it never gets obsolete. So that is what romantic poetry is. It has never become obsolete. It sounds as fresh to us today as it was at the time when it was being written. So these are the elements that distinguish romantic poets from the poets of the earlier era, and also from the poets which came after them, that is the Victorian poets. So the Victorian sensibility was changing, and the romantic poets also revolted in a way against the industrial development and industrial revolution that was taking place, because that was making the rural life, it was affecting the rural life, and people were moving from the rural areas to the urban areas, and this is something that was creating pain for the romantic poets, because they felt that a way of life was completely vanishing, and things were being taken over by industries, and human emotions and the simplicity of human life was being affected by this. So this also was one of the factors that was troubling them. So later on, of course, the Victorian poets, of course, they felt the loss of faith, and the age of doubt came in. So this was not there during the Romantic era, and they had complete faith in the universe. They had complete faith in human imagination, and creativity was a hallmark of romantic literature. Creativity is one word which means a lot to the Romantic era, and that perhaps is seen at its best in this era of literature. It perhaps is not found in this manner in any other era of English literature. So this is, I would like to conclude that the Romantic era is so crucial to the history of English literature that without it, it is very difficult to imagine English literature to be so beautiful and wondrous and so eternal. Thank you. We should talk about the influence of the French Revolution, which took place in 1789, on the minds of the great romantics like Wordsworth and Coleridge, who were the older romantics. They saw this phenomenon, this great phenomenon of history, when they were young men. So the impact on their minds was great, and it inspired them no end. But later on, the whatever happened later kind of disappointed them, and they could not recreate that inspiration which the French Revolution originally had on their young minds. And definitely the younger poets were, of course, not so impacted by the French Revolution, because they started writing much later. But for Wordsworth, it was a kind of a very great experience which he had as a young man. And we consider the Romantic period to last from around 1798 to 1832. We feel that that is the official date, but actually the elements of romance can never be eradicated from literature. So they just carried on, and traces of romanticism can be seen all over the world in various countries in their literatures. The elements of romance are always present, because there are certain writers whose temperament ensures that they write in this manner in which the Romantic poets did write. That means subjective, personal literature, which is marked by creativity and imagination, and does not depend all that much on intellect and technique, because that takes away from the spontaneity of literature sometimes if you concentrate too much on the technique and on the format. So that kind of original, intuitive literature can be found even today. So we can say that the era of romance or the age of romance has never really ended if we look at it from that point of view. And it is a genre which we still find in modern writers. Like we find this element of romance abundantly in Ruskin Bond's works, because he is imbued with a romantic imagination and he looks at even ordinary things and ordinary events in a very romantic manner, and he brings out the beauty of the surroundings and especially his love for nature. It's as we said that for Wordsworth it was on a spiritual level. So even for him it is actually on that level. He is really, really brought out in a wonderful manner all the beauty of his natural surroundings, of the hills, and all the aspects of nature, the climate, the weather, the mountains, the meadows, the gardens, the trees, especially the trees and the birds. So the birds and the trees and the clouds and the meadows have featured in all romantic poets, and they have never been able to escape from the beauty of nature. And so romanticism sometimes is seen as an escape from some form of reality. We can say that uh, Coleridge found his escape in the supernatural, and Wordsworth found it in the beauty of nature, and Keats perhaps found it in the beauty of Greek mythology and the sensuousness of nature. So it is yes, it is an escape, but not in a negative manner, because they do accept the reality. But yes, the present moment may not be very pleasant for them at times, and that's what makes them go into different worlds of imagination, which sometimes give a lot of joy and happiness both to the poets as well as the readers down the ages. They have found this love for beauty so fascinating, and Kubla Khan and its unusual landscape and a little scary landscape also has also fascinated readers down the centuries, and everybody still likes to go back to that poem despite its uh, kind of dreaminess and eeriness and something very far from reality. So he is, even the Ancient Mariner, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner also gives you that eerie feeling at times. But the beauty of the rhythms, the beauty of the lyrics, and the language, it has made it an absolute wonder for us till today. His poetry, Coleridge's poetry, and Keats, of course, his odes are the, you can say, a very, very important element of romantic literature. Ode to Autumn, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to Grecian Urn, and his Ode to Melancholy. So all these odes, they are the essence of his work, and they are the core of his work, and which we all study in the romantic period. Under the romantic period, the odes are, they stand out as one of the most beautiful uh, kind of testimony of a romantic age, and that is how we see Wordsworth's odes also, and Shelley's odes also. And the odes are very favorite form of poetry which these poets looked at, and it was a revival of sorts also in this manner. So the entire concept of returning to nature and returning to the countryside from the urban landscapes, returning to old stanza forms, returning to Greek mythology, and returning to the medieval ages. All this took the Romantics into a different world of literature altogether, and they have left behind works which are not just studied by students of English literature alone, but they are known across the world to all people who love to read, all lovers of literature, lovers of poetry. So all this is an immense body of um, timeless and beautiful work which has carried on down the centuries to um, fascinate people by their beauty, their truth, their universality, their lyricism, and their intuitiveness. Intuitiveness is actually a very special element, I would say, because some of the poetry, most of the poetry at times appears as if, it has a divine source, because nature also has been projected as a great source of peace and creativity by the Romantics. The intensification of feeling that we find in their poetry, the complete intensification of every emotion, that has its source in nature and in beauty, because their reaction or their response to beauty is what makes the poetry so intense. Because otherwise, if they are only looking at things which make the world unhappy, they perhaps would not have found their source of inspiration in the manner that they looked for it in beauty and in nature, and the in the eternal joy that beauty brings with it. So that is why Keats had said a thing of beauty is a joy forever. So a thing of beauty will always remain a source of joy for the Romantics, and it did also. In all their poetry, we see that beauty inspires them to no, inspires them no end, and they always look for beauty in nature and in mythology and in the folk stories, also in the legends, in the myths, and in the arts also, as we see in the Ode to a Grecian Urn, how he sees this ancient urn, and what is painted on it, and the scenes that are painted on it, how they inspire him to write this, and how he feels that although art is immortal and art is very beautiful, but yet it does not have life. He tells us that life is short and life is temporary and life passes away, and people die and people grow old, but at least while they are living they are alive. But in a in the form of art, if you see the beauty of the Grecian urn and the paintings made on it, they are timeless and immortal. They will always remain there, but they are not living. So art is not like life, so it cannot be like life, but yes, it can inspire you. The beauty of art can inspire you. So we see that the deepened appreciation for art and for other sources of beauty are found in Romantic poetry, and that is really something that you can say that it summarizes. Keats' line summarizes: beauty is truth, truth beauty. So truth is beautiful, beauty is truthful. So that is the soul, that is the soul of Romantic poetry, and how it has carried on and remained immortal. Thank you.